this is our agenda that was published in the newsletter, and I first wanted to share this extraordinary image that came across my news feed on Facebook, and then our dear Gorham Black, Colonel Black, shared it with us this morning via email, and I said, how appropriate is this? I know the original image of the little came out when Vice President Harris was first nominated. When her candidacy first announced, they had full image. Of course, this image today is the image of her walking to joint session of Congress. I thought, look what they captured. I mean, that is just incredible. The photographer that just snapped that image, it's just absolutely incredible. Very delighted to share that with our website, because again, just an extraordinary image, and one that I wanted to share with you all. But as I said, we're going to just talk about Our Story project, the working group activities, the upcoming that we're going to be sponsoring, and part in the nominating committee update, a little bit of the legislative update as the session was in its final week this past week, and then of course some current events that are happening in our own neighborhood and throughout the country. So that's basically what we'll be discussing this morning, and I'm going to stop the screen share now so that we can all see each other. And as I said, the first item, let me go back to my other screen here so I see what we're doing. Peggy is not with us this morning. Peggy Hostetler, Reverend Hostetler, is the obviously the working group chair for Chainbreakers, which is sponsoring the Our Story project. And Vanessa, are you comfortable giving a little bit of an update on where we are with that? Or Jill, Jill, you're muted.
Hey, let's Jill should do this one.
Okay, Jill, if you don't mind, thank you.
All I know at this point is we have about 20 stories from people who have been members or are currently members of Bridges that will be put together in a book and posted online. There are a few people who are still working on their stories that we're anticipating getting very soon. There were some videos of interviews done, but because of certain technical differences, the quality of them are not up there for mass distribution. So we're going to revisit the issue of videos, whether we can do them and have them more consistent technologically. And I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be said about it.
I think that about sums it up. And I know Cynthia Moody, you have been an anchor for us in all of this, and we're so glad to see you again this morning, and look forward to whenever you are ready for your re-engagement with us on that project. So welcome back. We're very glad to see you this morning. Very glad to see you this morning. I think that about covers it for the Our Story project, and we'll be creating, we'll be creating those little vignettes of quotes and whatnot, so that we can use those for promotional items and whatnot, almost like teasers, if you would, for lack of a better word, as we start launching the formal book project. So look excited to continue to have that move forward. The other thing that Peggy would have updated us on, and again, Delphine is with us this morning, is the essay contest for high school students. Delphine, want to give us an update on that, or where we are with that? Extraordinary participation this year.
Yes, we had 57 entries, 40 from Howard Middle School and 39 from the class of one Pamela Ernest, who last year also had her class submit the most entrants. I think the increased number came about because Pat Keith, my colleague, who should also be on this, a former high school principal, as you all know, we this year were the two judges. But Peggy, I think, did Zoom meetings last year with the classes, and this is what we propose to have her do this coming year with the two classes that had a large number of participants. The winners, the first, second, and third place winners will be presented to the school board on May the 25th at 5:30 p.m. The space is very, very limited, so
Yeah.
they will be announced at that time. Pat Keith and I also were just so overwhelmed. We talked about having honorable mentions and selected 5 in each category for the middle school and the high school. There seems to have been some discussion about that at a meeting I was not part of.
Mhm. Wonderful, wonderful. But yeah, the press releases have gone out. Thank you, Delphine, for scripting that so wonderfully for us. And so those announcements have gone out. We'll keep publicizing it in the newsletter as well, so that those of you that want to participate. And again, I'm assuming those school board meetings are still available via Zoom. So as again, space is limited because of legitimate COVID protocols and whatnot. So Zooming is always an option to see those wonderful students. And we're working on the appropriate recognition now, not only for the and Cindy, to answer your question, yes, we'll start featuring the winning essays in the newsletter. So yeah, we can start publicizing those.
May I interject one thing?
Sure.
Keith and I couldn't have done it without Jill actually running off hard copies for us.
Yeah,
It would have been
exactly.
impossible just to have done them off the computer directly. Thank you, Jill.
In the chat, someone wants to know what the prompt was for the essay.
It was about the January 6th event at the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
So they wrote about whether it was an insurrection or a
Protest.
Protest
Yeah.
or insurrection. You know, what did they see about that?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if the subject matter, just hit home for a lot of instructors and a lot of the student population as well. So again, probably one of the best in terms of just the number of entries that we received this year over past years. So very, very pleased about level of participation, which is always what you're seeking in those kind of situations. So very, 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 very good. Very, very, very good. I think that's about it for the working groups, for the chain breakers, rather.
Barbara,
Yes.
if people want to see Chris's information, it's in the chat right now.
Good deal. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Let's see. Other working groups. Let's see. What else did we talk about? We did receive a proposal from one of our public services librarians. His name is Jonathan Kahn. And he submitted a proposal that he was seeking Bridges endorsement and support for a project that he is proposing at the public library. And he is proposing the establishment of an LGBTQ youth club at the public library. The idea being it's an education opportunity, it's a research opportunity, it's a connection opportunity for the LGBTQ youth to have a safe haven and a safe space in which to meet. He's put together an entire proposal in terms of readings, crafts, and he calls it readings, crafts, and conversations, and is very, very encouraging for that level of participation of the youth and the LGBTQ community. Obviously, a great, great, great need for that connectivity, and the library obviously as a safe haven, as a diverse space, as a welcoming space, seems to be the ideal place for that to occur. Sought an endorsement from Bridges, and the board has approved endorsement. Vanessa.
Let me also add that if any of you listening have a church or another organization that you belong to that would be interested in this, we'll forward the information to you.
Yes. Yes, he's put together quite an extraordinary proposal. And what we do not know, and it's a proposal at this point, so obviously it has to go through appropriate library laws. Now, whether that is something that the library director can unilaterally approve, or whether it's something that may have to go before the Board of County Commissioners for approval. Whether it can be approved through administration, through the county administrator, or whether it has to go forward and be approved by the county commission. If so, then our level of support and engagement will escalate in terms of making those presentations before the Board of County Commissioners. Regretfully, as conservative as they are, that could potentially be a fight in terms of having that come forward. We just don't know the answer to that at this point in terms of who has the final say or authority. If it can be done simply as a program of the library, and Julie has that discretion as library director to approve it, and it can go forward from there, or whether or not it has to go farther than that. We don't know the answer to that yet. So we'll keep everybody abreast of that, because as I said, the support and endorsement is going to be forthcoming. The board approved that letter of endorsement, and that will be going forward. But again, it may not stop there in terms of how additionally engaged the Bridges will need to be on that topic. Again,
is Bridges going to be willing to meet the challenge if there is a resistance to this?
Well, it would come back to Bridges for discussion, in terms of the next step in our support and endorsement. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I right now, we just don't know and cannot speak to that question until we have more information. Again, we'll bring it back to the Bridges board for consideration, and to the membership for further consideration. So that's where we are with that. So again, that's that.
Barbara,
Yes, ma'am.
I suggested to Jonathan also to contact the Racial Harmony and Cultural Awareness Task Force of the city of Ocala, because that's part of their inclusiveness too, right?
Well, at this point, let me tell you something. At the last meeting we had for the Racial Harmony Task Force, the gentleman whose name I'm forgetting right now, he's in charge of maintenance for all the city buildings, had just left a meeting And the verbiage from this meeting of the city city leadership was that inclusion, they wanted inclusion to be communicated in whatever they do, that inclusion is a priority for them. So I would imagine this would be a nice little test of that.
Yep.
But that was the city, not the county.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, but again, inclusion is wonderful, but it's somewhat counterintuitive based on the recent action of city council relative to changing the language in the city charter to be gender neutral. So
Yes.
that's not inclusive. Sorry.
No.
Excuse me for the editorial. But yeah, that's a wonderful initiative, and I'm not trying to belittle it in any way. But it is counterintuitive based on the action of city council or recently, and all of the protests that came forward as a result of that suggestion of gender neutral language in the city charter. So anyway, the upcoming events, the Juneteenth celebration that Bridges is sponsoring at Circle Square Culture Center, in terms of, in conjunction, Bridges is the sponsor. Master the Possibility is assisting in the links of putting that event. We're very to have Kimberly Wilson, the one show, and her play and her program is called The Journey, and absolutely appropriate as we start the Juneteenth celebration, both at Master the Possibilities, which that event will kick off the exhibit that Reverend Chandler is doing again this year at Master the Possibilities that entire weekend. And then, of course, there is a new commission that has been formed called the Juneteenth Ocala the Juneteenth Celebration Commission in Ocala. It was spearheaded by a lovely young woman by the name of Sharrington Houston. And she has put together a dynamic committee. I'm helping her representing Bridges. And they are putting on a community-wide event at Webb Field on Saturday, which is June 19th, which is the Juneteenth anniversary. So it will be a day of celebration. She will have speakers and music and entertainment and vendors and food and just a family-oriented, community-wide celebration. And again, Bridges has committed to have a booth or have a presence there in terms of sharing the Bridges story at that event as well. So that's going to be a busy weekend, but again, one that I think is appropriate for us to be engaged in, not as a sponsor for the program, to participate in the event on Saturday as well. So that would be the thing that is forthcoming for us. And I know that Bruce Seaman is the chair of the nominating committee for this year. He has put together those committee members, and they will be meeting this month with the intention of bringing forward a slate for your consideration at our June meeting. And that information obviously will be forthcoming. Again, we have some board vacancies based on retirements and resignations. And so those of you that may have an interest, please let us know, or let Bruce Seaman know that you may have an interest in serving on the board of directors for the Bridges project. So we thank you for that as well. Legislative update. I did not read, did they adjourn the session or are they continuing? I did not read the update on that. Does anyone have information on that? As to whether they adjourned the session or not? This was the final week, was it not?
Yes, they've adjourned, I believe.
Did they adjourn? Thank you, thank you. I wasn't sure if they had to extend it for any reason or not, so. I open the floor now for discussion on any of the legislative issues that may be of particular concern to any of you as members, or just for general conversation purposes. In terms of some of the bills that were brought forth that the governor did sign and the impact that those might have. So we open it up for general conversation.
If I may jump in, this is Chris Kennard.
Of course, Chris, go ahead, please. I would encourage you to do so.
Alrighty. This is something that in truth really needs to be done in this area. I raised my children in Gainesville. I was a union president there for a number of years, and was involved in the activities there in that area. Whereas Ocala was always kind of looked at as needing help. I don't know how else to put that, towards making some changes. I used to come here to speak to people who were in unions. I was an elected union president and AFL-CIO officer. And we'd come here to speak to people in Marion County who were involved in the very few unions that were in the area. And we were regarded literally as having, horns and tails. And we were promoting racial relations and equality, which was not a message that was well received in all sectors here. So I'm living here now in Ocala, and I would like to participate in making some changes in this area. One of the ways that I see best doing that is by having public displays of people out or peacefully, not just protesting, but making our presence and our voices known. Because certainly we need to organize a different energy here in Ocala and Marion County, so it's not just a one-party rule. We need both parties participating if we're ever going to succeed in unifying people. So I've written something that I'm looking for people who would be interested in participating, planning and participating a public event or a series of public events. And as some of you know, I use petitions as a way to reach across the political divide. I've done that with the medical marijuana and the legal cannabis petitions in this community particularly, and the felons' right to vote back in 2018 was fairly popular at one point, also in this area. Those are ways that we can reach out to people and bring people together issue by issue, even if they have different political beliefs and belong to different political parties. So I'd love to hear anyone's response to what I'm saying.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to put the Bridges email address for submitting ideas or documents or anything. I'm going to put it in the chat room, and please look at that and make that your source for sending us anything. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anything else you wanted to update?
No, other than I do think that we need to move quickly on this. why it's definitely in the news. And I do believe that citizens have a responsibility now of showing that we can actually assemble together in public and peacefully, productively voice our concerns and our interests to make sure that everyone knows that we can do this. It makes it sound as if Florida's just a bunch of violent insurrectionists or something.
Mhm.
Well, I did read recently that there's going to be a legal challenge to the constitutionality of that, but that's without
Oh, yeah.
question.
Yes, and that does a lot. That does a lot. I've worked through the courts a number of years. I've had to file EEOC charges for discrimination against women and black citizens in Florida. That goes only so far. What really needs to be done is the immature of the people themselves. We are a majority at this point who would like to see everyone treated equally in this country and move forward from our past to a much brighter future for everyone. We need to be able to do that. And the only way it's going to happen, it's not going to happen through the politicians, and it can't happen through the courts. We elect the politicians, and we also make sure who gets appointed to the courts by electing our politicians and electing some of these people in our lower courts. So that's why I'm saying I think it's absolutely necessary for us to act now without much delay.
So Chris, submit whatever you want to submit to that email address, and then the persons that do the newsletters will pass it on, okay?
I appreciate that very much. Yes. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's basically, Chris, the impetus too behind getting our story out too, in terms of why it's so vitally important right now to engage. And so again, there's an enhanced sense of urgency now in getting that done. Of course, especially as a result of this past legislative action on the part of the governor, especially on those two bills in particular. And again, just what's continuing to happen in our own community in terms of just what happened with something as respectfully presented as the idea of changing very narrow language in the city charter. The state did it a number of years ago in the state charter. And so why wouldn't the local community do the same thing, especially in light of the fact that we now have a female city manager and all of the pronouns referred to male. And it was all, so again, what was done as a sign of respect and acknowledgement got totally turned around and totally blown out of proportion to the point where the pastors who included that as one of their recommendations had to withdraw it because they were concerned that it would torpedo or stymie any recommendations for change because of that one issue. So again, we've got a lot of work to do. So that level of engagement now is more critical than ever, So to have those conversations in the forefront, I think are going to be more and more vital. So we appreciate that feedback. And again, and just anything else currently. Delphine, did you have something?
I think what Chris is bringing up speaks to the very bottom line of what Bridges is all about. Waiting for stories to be published is too late. There is the urgency of now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be out in the street in some way, visible very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley.
Delphine, Chris, thanks.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
I wait to speak to you, Chris.
Please
Gee.
feel free anytime.
Mhm.
Jill, yeah, Jill, you had one of the Indivisible groups. Is Indivisible thinking about organizing a event?
Indivisible is not currently active since the pandemic and the death of Rick Black.
Rick Black.
Yeah,
So it's just kind of in limbo right now. It's just not active at this time.
okay.
Mhm.
If I could offer, I'd be very interested in helping revive that group. It was a very, very productive group.
Well, less and less people were coming out for the meetings, and it was a huge burden on me. So if you want to take over and be Indivisible, I'd be happy to hand the mantle over to you.
All right, I'm not sure I can do that alone because I'm involved around the state, but I certainly would be interested in finding a group of people that would be interested in picking this up again.
All right,
How about starting with the Democrats who are meeting Monday night?
Very good place.
Mhm.
I have a question. Does Bridges write press releases? Or is there anything sent to the paper or anyone else in the name of Bridges when these kinds of things happen?
Not currently.
Mhm.
We do press releases on events. Obviously, the essay contest was the latest one that we've done, but part of the telling of the story has to be that we get a robust and frequent letter writing campaign on issues that come up. The letter of endorsement. We should not be waiting for someone like a Jonathan Kahn or a Chris Kennard to come forward and say, here's what we're working on, help us do this. There's got to be more of an initiative on the part of Bridges to be at the forefront of convening those conversations. And some of the efforts that we're working on, and again, Cindy, we're working on that in conjunction with Circle Up. I think bringing, for example, the Braver Angels program to this area can be a significant piece, but in the interim, that's a planning process. We want to work more with the idea of the memorial, of the lynching memorial and whatnot. We've got to be more in the forefront of that. And of course, the hiatus that was necessary because of COVID has had an impact. But I think going forward, that urgency of now, as Delphine so well said, and as Chris noted to us as well, now is the time to really re-engage, but to be more proactive than simply reactive as events transpire. So point well taken. And I think that's something that we're going to work on in terms of especially the outreach and communication effort working group to be more vocal and recognition, getting out in the community, both in the written word and the spoken word, is going to be very vital going forward. Vanessa.
So even though it would be after the fact, I could imagine Bridges putting out a press release because we have done this. I think
Yes, we
Bert did
have.
one when it came to the Confederate Memorial holiday thing. But we could put out something in relation to our position on what happened at the city council meeting and how that needs to be revisited and that the changes do need to be made and support that. And if we did it, maybe another organization would feel inclined to do the same thing, or we could literally make contact with 4 or 5 organizations that we know well and make sure we all put out a statement to that effect.
Yes. And, it's going to let people know that we're here.
Correct.
And doing something, so it actually then becomes a sort of calling card. Oh, these are people
Mhm.
that believe like I do.
Correct. And that's an encouragement for other people to join in the effort, that they're not alone, that they're not isolated in their views, that there are other like-minded people out there. So yeah, that's telling that story.
What struck me, I just looked really quickly at that article, that 30 people were lined up to speak. So they have some systems in place for organizing people very quickly. And I feel like we need to do the same thing.
Right.
Right? What if there had been 40 people or 50 people that were on the other side saying, this is ridiculous?
I
And
know.
of course
yeah,
we need
exactly.
to just say, city council person, member.
Yeah.
I just think that is probably what's lacking on this other side of the spectrum, is that we don't organize in the way that others have done.
Mhm.
Well, and this was a very clandestine organization of people. I think Sarah Clifton caught up on it because she's got her finger on the pulse of Ocala politics. I had no idea. I mean, how many of us even knew it was going to be up for discussion? I didn't know.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Barbara.
I attended the workshop several months ago, earlier this year, where they were talking about the proposal to amend or update the city charter. And I know Whitfield Jenkins had taken the lead through his connections and organizations, et cetera, and really insisting that the city council put together a citizens committee for input on recommended changes to the chart, and take that to heart in terms of seriousness. At that workshop, the group of pastors were in attendance. I was in attendance. I don't know how many people were on Zoom, but I mean, it was sparsely attended in person. And I was, as I said, one of few, including several of the pastors. And at that workshop, the city council made the decision at that point that they would do the updates themselves with input from the city manager and the city attorney, and would not put it out for a citizens committee for any kind of input. And the pastors got up and said, would you entertain recommendations from citizens as a whole? And Councilman Musley at that point said, absolutely, we would engage that. So while they became very in terms of saying we're going to do this ourselves, they did not diminish or discourage input from citizens as a whole. So, but again, how widespread that information was, the pastors knew about it and then got together and made about a half a dozen recommendations, especially as a result of the election for Ira Bethea to fill Mary Sue Rich's seat, and all of the issues that evolved over that and how many times it had to be redone, et cetera, et cetera. And there was some vagueness in the charter that was subject to interpretation that needed to be cleaned up. And that was one of their recommendations. And they made the recommendation about the gender neutral language, again, out of respect and recognition for the fact that we now have a female city manager. And the language was just very male specific. So that's how all of that evolved. But again, there was, the agendas are posted the Friday before the Tuesday meetings, but again, there was not wide information forthcoming that this was going to be a topic for consideration. So, someone like Sarah, who follows the city council and the local politics very carefully, did know about it and did attend, and she attends many of those city council meetings, because when I've been there, she has been there. But again, that's probably something that we should follow as Bridges in terms of the agendas for the county commission and the agendas for city council. And any subjects coming forward that are of importance or are issues that Bridges is involved with, we should have representation there in attendance, because again, people are able to speak and they have public comment. So we need to do a better job of having that represented. And I know it's difficult, people are extraordinarily busy and, the constraints of attending in person, but we'll make those recommendations, again, through outreach and communication as being the hub. But if it's an issue on education, we need to follow the school board as well. If it's an issue on education, if it's an issue such as this, farm it out or refer it back to the individual working groups so that they can send a representative from the working group. So we'll work on that in terms of enhancing that level of engagement at the local level.
So if you watch the video, and if anybody, I'll put the link to the video in the chat room. Those people were not even wearing masks.
No.
So they made it a very dicey situation for people in the same room. Okay, I'll put the video link in the chat.
Well, I did speak to the city manager after the fact, said that because of the social distancing requirements and whatnot, people were lined up out in the lobby, down the stairs, in the lobby, downstairs, and but again, still very congested because of the number of people that were there and wanted to speak. So not necessarily the healthiest of environments relative to COVID protocols. So, and all the more reason that people should have been masked. So anyway.
Barbara, I did speak.
That's another statement.
I did speak to Sarah Clifton after I had seen her in the video, and she was the only one to speak up in that entire room.
I know.
About how irrational this whole thing was. And so I'm begging her to write something. Maybe we could include her in putting together a letter from Bridges.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we can use some of her quotes if she will give us permission to do that, because she spoke very eloquently. So, and that was published in I think part of her quotes were published in the Gazette or one of the papers. So we can do that accordingly. Okay, very good. Anything else of concern to those that are here on the call today, on the Zoom call today? All righty. All righty, hearing no other, I think that is what we had put forth today for our conversation this Saturday morning. So if there's further to come before us this afternoon or this morning, oh, look.
This is for Teddy, her twin.
Ah.
I'm sorry, Barbara. I tuned in late. Do we mention anything about our in-person meeting? How soon? Bert had mentioned maybe June. Was anything mentioned about any?
No, not yet, Gwen. We've got another meeting. Actually, our plan year ends June 30. So it's possible that we'll get through. We may do elections in person. That may be something we need to talk about, but the board hasn't made any decisions yet. Bert's been out of town, so I want to defer to her until she gets back this month, and we can get a meeting on it. But if we do meet in person, we'll make sure that everybody gets advance notification on it, and we'll follow all the appropriate COVID protocols and whatnot. But it would be easier to do elections in person rather than via Zoom. So we understand that. Thank you for bringing that up, Gwen. But we'll be sure to notify everybody. That's a topic for discussion for our May board meeting, and we'll make sure you get ample notification that we will be meeting in person and advance. So we'll take care of that for you.
Great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. So, yeah. Again, as more and more of us are vaccinated and the comfort level is increasing for in-person gatherings and whatnot, again, following appropriate protocols still, it may be time for us to resume our meetings in person. So we'll keep you well apprised of that going forward. So thank you all very much. So anything else for the good of the order this morning? And it's still morning. I'm looking at the clock. So anything else for the good of the order? We so appreciate you all being with us this morning and engaging in what is always great conversation. Chris, thank you very much for your feedback and input. Delphine, thank you for yours as well. Excellent suggestions, Cindy, going forward. And we will take those to heart and keep you all posted through our newsletters and e-blasts accordingly. So have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day and the rest of the weekend. Stay well, be safe. And thank you again for your participation and what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you all very much. Have a good one.
Have a great weekend.
Have a good day.
Thank you.